What is up, everyone? Crunchyfrog here, and as you may have noticed, the last few weeks I haven't exactly been able to put consistently a video of Call of Duty out per week as usual. And I've noticed that a similar trend is happening with other Call of Duty content creators on both YouTube and Twitch and everything like that as well. Myself and many others just seem kind of burned out on it. But is that because of Modern Warfare 2 specifically, or is there something larger at play here? Is Call of Duty even still enjoyable or fun, or has something drastically changed? Well, today we'll dive into what makes COD fun for me and what has made COD fun in the past, and what of those elements is maybe missing in recent years that maybe just makes Call of Duty not have the same, pop that it used to. As always, guys, if you like this content, if you like these type of videos, make sure to leave a like rating and subscribe for more. I do try to get at least one gameplay commentary out per week, as well as some Let's Plays and other fun stuff such as reviews on this channel. So, your support always goes a long way. So with that out of the way, let's get right into it. So, first, we kind of need to dissect what makes COD fun for me personally. And, obviously, to start out, I just want to say that in my review of Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer, I did say that this is one of the most fun Call of Duties in recent memory. And I still hold to that. When this game is fun, it is really fun. Unfortunately, sometimes it's pretty awful as well, and we'll get into that in the second half of the video, but I just wanted to really get that out there first and foremost, that I do think that this is some of the most fun I've had in several years, but, we'll kind of dissect if that amount of fun is enough to carry me through the entire year. So to start off on what makes COD fun, at least in my eyes, is first and foremost the social aspect. I mean, one of the main things that got me into COD was from playing at friends' houses, right? I'd go over to spend the night when I was in middle school, and we'd stay up all night playing Call of Duty 4 or, playing Zombies once World of War came out. And one of my fondest memories, honestly, was when my buddy went and got Modern Warfare 2. He got it on release day, and I ended up going back to his house. I remember we went to Dave & Buster's during the day, which is kind of like a barcade type thing for kids and adults. We went there during the day, and I remember being so psyched to stay over his house that night to play Modern Warfare 2 for the first time. I mean, that is like a memory that will carry with me forever. And we did. We played it all night. I don't even think we went to bed that night. Switching off on the controller, playing the brand new Modern Warfare 2 when it literally on release day. So that's something that I hold near and dear to my heart. And that's something that really got me into Call of Duty. That's what got me to ask for it for Christmas and eventually get it once we got a PC that could handle it and stuff like that. I mean, there's many late nights, like I said, staying up all night, just playing public lobbies together or playing Zombies. And then once I eventually got an Xbox to be able to play with my friends, obviously that just increased tenfold. Playing from our respective bedrooms on Xbox Live and Party Chat until 3, 4 a.m. I remember the Christmas that I got my first Xbox 360 and Xbox Live. I also got Black Ops 2, and we played the multiplayer for several hours at first, and then we swapped over to Zombies, and we played that till 4:30 a.m. I remember it was like 4:30, almost 5. I actually got yelled at to finally go to bed, and it's just memories like that are what really got me into COD and made COD the most fun for me growing up. And besides obviously playing with real life friends, I also got into several gaming clans and communities throughout the years, starting the whole way back in COD 4. And, I made dozens of friendships. And honestly, that kind of carried me through a lot of my awkward teenage years as well. Just that social interaction, playing COD with other people, especially in those gaming clans and communities. There's people from all over the world. It wasn't just people in my same small town that I grew up with and went to high school with. It was people from different countries, different time zones. And it just really, had a social aspect that I don't think we'll ever return to, right? I don't play with people all around the world anymore, and I probably never will. But during those beginning years, that's all I did, and I think that is why I hold COD in such a high regard, honestly. And just kind of, growing off of that as well, I just feel like everyone talked about the game back in the day, how many kill streaks they got and what kills they got and stuff like that the next day in school. And I feel like that could very much so just be because we were kids, right? And maybe kids still do that, and they probably still do with Warzone, or come home and say that they got a chopper gunner on shipment, or, whatever. I'm sure that still happens And so we'll touch on this later, but part of it maybe is just that I'm growing out of that. But I remember that that was such a huge thing, that just Call of Duty held such clout, right? If you went into middle school or early high school the next day and said that you got a nuke, I mean, you were like a god for the next 8 hours of that school day, right? And I think that that was a big thing that got us all into it, right? We talked about it. It was a ritual every day after school to kind of hop on, and immediately from the time we got home, whether we had basketball practice or anything else after school, but the moment we got home and finished eating dinner, we were on that until we were pretty much getting yelled at to go to bed. And I even remember on holidays, right? Everyone would do stuff with their families, but then we'd all get that text at like 7 or 8 p.m. like, hey guys, I'm getting on for the rest of the night. And so for breaks from school or snow days or anything like that, just it seemed like everyone was constantly online. You could boot up your Xbox 360 or PS3 or whatever and pull up your friends list, and just everyone was on. And I mentioned a lot in one of my last videos talking about kind of how the social aspect grew in the golden age of COD and how it's kind of dwindled since then. So that definitely kind of plays into maybe why it's not as fun anymore. But that huge social aspect is what got me into COD and honestly got me through my teenage years. As dumb as that sounds. The next big thing that I think used to make COD so fun for me was just the drive to always be better, right? When I started, I absolutely sucked. For context, I started out on PC just because we needed a PC at home. So we ended up just spending an extra, $100 or $200 to get more or less a gaming PC, or a PC that was good enough for me to play the games that I wanted to. That was back in like before the 2010s, so you didn't exactly need a 4090 just to be able to boot up the latest indie game, right? It was a little more realistic back in those days. And so whenever I started, I didn't know how to use a mouse and keyboard to game, so I absolutely sucked. So it was really fun to watch as my KDR slowly rose, right? When I started playing, I just got slaughtered by everyone. I'd go 1 in 20. I would be running into walls. I didn't know what I was doing. But slowly, as I learned, as I watched YouTube videos, as everything like that, my KDR slightly rose. And then suddenly I'd occasionally have a positive game, or I'd go on a 3 or 4 kill streak, and just slowly build up. And, until eventually I knew that if I really tried and I was locked in and I wasn't in too sweaty of a lobby, I could just absolutely dominate the lobby, 23 and 4, get crazy gameplay quality, YouTube quality clips and everything if I really tried my hardest. And it was cool to see that progression, right? And I always tried to kind of best my KDR from the game before, right? Okay, listen, I'm better at Call of Duty now. This is a clean slate. Let's try to get a 1.4 this year, in this iteration of COD. And every game that came out, I would try to best myself. And then obviously constantly just trying to see that kill number go up, the KDR number go up. I remember at our computer desk, we always had a calculator just for bills and stuff like that. But I would use it every single day. And before we had like a comprehensive combat record with KDRs and everything, I try to actually type out, and figure out my KDR at the end of every night. That was super weird, but it was just cool to see that number go up. And it always scratched that competitive itch that I had, if I wasn't playing sports. I played a couple of sports growing up, but, in the off season, or what have you, in years I didn't play sports, that kind of scratched that competitive itch for me as I was growing up. Obviously, kind of tied in with that is the huge dopamine rush that COD kind of bakes into its gameplay loop when you get high KDRs or streaks, right? That's what made COD so much fun, especially in the games where your streaks build off of one another. COD's entire gameplay loop is centered around racking up kills and consecutive kills and, huge streaks. And then you call in a chopper gunner that gives you even more streaks and gets you up to the nuke, stuff like that. Just the thrill of going on a high kill streak or getting a massive kill death ratio in a game is just nearly unmatched, especially in the golden age of COD before skill based. And we'll get into that and everything. But, you remember those games. There was nothing better than going 23 and 1 and, just the whole lobby being in awe of you. For a little bit. And COD kind of built its entire gameplay loop around that, and that's what made it so fun back in the day. And obviously with COD's tighter gunplay and everything that's been well refined year after year, and it's just the game's so fun to play when you're on a roll. And like I said, that's not the case so much anymore, and we'll get into that. But that just some of the greatest memories in gaming I have from as a kid was going on those crazy tears, getting an insane 30 in one game, something like that I could brag to my friends about at school the next day. There was also constantly fun maps to play with. Some of the best maps in Call of Duty history were in that golden age of COD, right? COD 4 through Black Ops 2 is kind of the general area that I give for the quote unquote golden age. But so many of those maps that we had back then are still being remastered today because they're so good. They're fan favorites. They really knocked it out of the park, and we really don't see that too often anymore nowadays. You know, COD just had a history of making maps that were memorable. Not only were they good to play, but they stuck in your mind, whether it be the setting, the visuals, just certain, sightlines, whatever the case may be, they were memorable. We still remember them 13, 14 years later. And, they were kind of linked to the period of our lives that we played. Whenever we played that game, those maps were so memorable that, we can almost, in our minds, just reconstruct, like, picturing staying up late on a summer evening when I didn't have to work. Oh, God, I miss those days. And being able to, run through it. It's really weird, but it's several of the Modern Warfare 2 maps. I could just, it like takes you back in time, right? You see one of those Modern Warfare 2 maps and it takes you back to a specific time when you remember playing that game because they were so memorable, right? They weren't just a boring city that looked slightly different than the city from the other map, or, some of the kind of terrible maps that we've had nowadays that we just groan whenever they come up on the playlist. That's not to say that there wasn't, bad maps back then, because there was, but it just seemed like there were so many more memorable and well-developed and, a lot more creativity was put into the maps back then. And that kind of ties into the next point, which is it could very well be that the reason I have such a positive outlook on COD and the reason why I think so highly of it and I think I had so much fun is just because of that nostalgia factor, right? Arguably, COD, as with any game, just kind of becomes linked with the time and place you are in life when you play it. The quote-unquote golden era, again, COD 4 to Black Ops 2, will forever remind me of my late middle school, early high school life. And especially as I get older into my, high 20s, those times are held near and dear to us. And I think that, everything that comes along with those time periods in our life, we tend to start forgetting all the bad stuff that happened and just look back fondly on the good stuff. And the same thing happens with the games. And if you're anything like me and gaming was a big part of your childhood, those become kind of inexorably linked. And, you can't remember a good part of your life without remembering the games that you played during that good time and vice versa. Once we get older and things change, we kind of find ourselves looking back on those days, both in terms of the fun or good times, just remember the good things that were happening outside the game, maybe a first girlfriend or, if your family moved into a nicer house or something like, whatever the case may be, it kind of becomes linked with COD. And so that's probably why we look back on COD so fondly. There's probably a lot of horrible moments, and a lot of times I know that I broke like a keyboard tray back in the day. Like COD 100% was not perfect back in the day, but I think, as we look back on it now, obviously I don't have hindsight for Modern Warfare 2, but, at the very least, we have hindsight of those games, so we tend to remember them maybe being funner than they were. That's not to say they weren't incredible games, but perhaps the nostalgia factor tends to add to the fun factor for those CODs, knowing that, every time you play, you're possibly making memories that you'll cherish in the future. And that's kind of something that does ring true today. Every time I play, I think, what will I be thinking about in 10 years? But this isn't necessarily a COD exclusive phenomena, so I probably won't dive any deeper. I could probably do an entire hour-long video about nostalgia and video games and how that ties into how we, experience and enjoy them. But for right now, we'll just say, maybe that's why we enjoyed COD so much. So now we'll kind of step back and knowing what made COD great for me, at least, for a brief period of time. Now we'll kind of dissect, is the current set of games, does it live up to any of those standards that we set? Is the game still fun? So obviously the first thing, again, we'll go back to the social aspect. And I talked about this again in a couple of videos ago, but the social aspect is there, but not nearly as strong. And so I definitely still play with friends. Matter of fact, I hardly ever boot up COD by myself. If I'm not just grinding a camo or something on a double XP weekend, like 9 times out of 10, if I boot up COD, it's because somebody else is there. We're going to play together. I did even manage to have a launch night with a bunch of my guy friends, as well as a couple of other nights where we all just packed into, someone's basement and played the game for several hours, went to bed at 3, 4 a.m., whatever the case may be, to kind of try to recapture our youth. But the game was fun enough that it enabled us to do that, right? If Modern Warfare 2 had come out and we all hated it on launch night, we wouldn't have been able to have those experiences. So I do think that, it's still fun, and I was able to kind of do some of the things I was able to do as a child. Luckily I have stuff like PTO, so I can take days off of work for the launch and stuff like that. And so I was able to recreate those experiences, and they were still fun. And I gotta say that is still one of the best parts of Call of Duty is playing with a group of friends, if you have a group of friends that still plays it. Obviously, another great memory is playing in a full stack with a group of friends in Search and Destroy has honestly been some of the most fun I've had in a video game for several years. And I'm usually not a Search and Destroy fan by any means, but at one point we had 4 guys that played together constantly, myself included. And there were several weekends where we just played Search and Destroy for hours and hours on end. And again, that's one of the most fun experience I've had in a long time. So, I got to thank Modern Warfare 2 for giving me that memory. And hopefully, we'll get that gang back together here in the next couple of weeks as well. And also, as kind of a recent development, right, they added the ranked play to the game. And at the launch of that, it was actually really fun. We had a lot of fun with the ranked mode. Now, obviously, it kind of fell off, and there's a whole lot of stuff wrong with ranked I won't get into in this video. But at the very least, the very first weekend that ranked play launched, again, we piled in there with a couple of friends, and it was just so fun. And it kind of scratched that social aspect itch that I haven't been able to have since, honestly, since the golden age, if I'm to be honest. And we were even able to pull in an out-of-state friend who we really haven't been able to talk to since maybe a couple of the early days of Warzone back in the quarantine period, but a couple of years ago. But we were able to kind of get him back in the fold, so to speak, because he enjoyed the game, because we all enjoyed the game. So Modern Warfare 2 kind of brought us together as a friend group once again. So that's kind of the social aspect. So just based on that alone, Call of Duty is still fun, but unfortunately there are some things that, kind of take away from that. So here's the biggest thing that possibly ruins the fun factor for COD for me, and that is we talked about always striving to be better. And unfortunately, that's just not as possible in this game. Obviously, I still try to up my game whenever possible, improve accuracy, get better weapons to use. I'm learning the maps every single time I play them, so that's constantly improving. But the recent matchmaking systems that they've implemented just make the effort futile. There's no need or purpose to get any better, right? It just absolutely kills my incentive to try and improve my game. As soon as I become a little more skilled or start to string together a couple good games, the algorithm or the skill-based engagement-only matchmaking, whatever you want to call it, decides that I need stiffer competition. And the next thing I know, I'm back to going, 4-15 or just absolutely getting stomped by people who have probably tried out for pro teams before. At least it feels that way. And so again, that just kills any incentive I have to get better, because I know there's no light at the end of the tunnel. My KDR will never tangibly improve, at least not by much, right? I won't be able to sit here with a calculator like I said I did back in Modern Warfare 2, the original Modern Warfare 2, because it doesn't matter. It'll always stay around 1. I'm in the portion of the player base that is above average, but I'm not good enough to where the game cannot physically match me with my peers all the time. And so I'm constantly just getting stuck with people that are either slightly better than me or slightly worse. And depending on how the algorithm wants me to stick on the game or not, it'll toss me a bone sometimes. It'll take that bone away from me. Whatever the case may be, there's just no incentive to get better. Maybe I am getting better. Like I said, as I get better with the game and play it more, my accuracy, my map knowledge, but I'll never know. Because I won't go from, a 0.8 KDR to a 1.4 KDR. I'll just stay at a 1.0. I'll just be facing harder people, so it'll be sweatier lobbies and I'll be versing better people, but there's no tangible stats to prove that I'm getting any better, besides maybe looking at my accuracy or something like that. So I no longer get to measure my skill against the general public, right? There's not a high watermark that I can look at. I'm just constantly versing people that are around my skill level. And, depending on which end of the pigeon and statue metaphor the engagement-only matchmaking algorithm wants me to be on, kind of dictates what each match goes. And, I could make an entire video about this. And again, I've talked about skill-based matchmaking in a lot of my videos, but just suffice to say, it heavily ruins the fun. because you're never dominating and you're never feeling like you're getting better. And that kind of ties into my next point, which again, like we talked about above, the dopamine hits that, high kill streaks and a lot of just kills in general give you, skill-based ruins that as well. With much more balanced, quote unquote, lobbies and everyone being around your skill level, huge blowout games just don't happen as often. And they certainly don't happen predictably. You have a lot less stake in the game, right? The game just kind of tells you when you're going to do good and when it's going to match you against, FaZe Clan rejects that are going to absolutely put you in your place. The game decides that. And again, being the COD's entire game loop is centered around you doing well and dominating to get that dopamine flow, it just doesn't feel as good. It kills so much of the fun, like an enormous amount of the fun. And, while this plays a small point, it still is a small part of Call of Duty. You still do get streaks occasionally. You still do have some good games. It is just sorely lacking. And apart from some insane streamers and those who use reverse boosting, sometimes they're one and the same, the days of pub stomping or just going insane all night are effectively over. Like those streaks where you're like, I'll go to bed whenever I get a negative KDR, and then you stay up till 7 a.m. because you just went 14-3 for the last, 5 hours. It doesn't happen anymore. And it may never happen again with these, algorithms and matchmaking systems and whatever else. High streaks are almost never seen in the game. Occasionally a chopper gunner here and there, but that's about it. I don't think I've ever been nuked. Maybe once in my well over, however many hundreds or thousands of matches I've played in this game in the last 6 months. I've only seen one nuke. And contrast that with the original Modern Warfare 2, which was like, several times a week you would get nuked. And people would try for nukes. Now, unless you reverse boost for days or weeks on end, you don't get that. You can't have that. So occasionally you'll see, a Harrier in the sky for 7 or 8 kills, or Chopper Gunner, which is I think 9 or 10 or 11 or something like that. But that's about as high as it goes. Very, very, very rarely will you see someone actually dominating enough to get anything higher than that. And usually it's, again, whenever they were put into a lucky lobby, after they just got stomped on for 4 matches, they finally, got thrown a bone and they were able to go on a 10-kill streak or something like that. Next up, we talked about maps, and recently, COD maps just don't seem as interesting or creative. I do appreciate the devs sticking to a little more realism for the Modern Warfare series. I think it really helps with the immersion of the games and with the setting and everything, but they almost feel too safe. Right? We don't have any standout maps. Maybe 1 or 2 maps per game that really stand out and you're like, oh, hell yeah. Like, for example, Farm 18 in Modern Warfare 2, I really enjoy that map. And so it's like, yeah, when that comes up, awesome, I'm excited to play it. But how many maps really stick out to you, especially in like Modern Warfare 2019 or Cold War or Vanguard? Like, Vanguard's maps sucked. And, I just feel like the maps just aren't as good anymore. They're not as creative. And the DLC maps are even worse, arguably. Just a lot of the new content is just recycled stuff. So instead of getting all new, maps that could be future favorites to look back on in 10 years, we just get rehash maps that we've already been playing for years now. And while this nostalgia is fun at first on those maps, it wears off quickly and we begin to really yearn for actual new exciting content, especially in this game where almost every map that they've given to us so far, 4 or 5 maps or 4 or 5 months into the game cycle have all been just remasters. Now, luckily, they just released the new Himmelmatt Expo map, which is actually really cool and a good example of them actually giving you some cool content, some innovative content. But until then, it was just a bunch of rehashed maps. So that kind of kills the fun factor as well. And, next up, again, the childhood nostalgia thing. One thing that these newer games can never replicate, no matter what they try to do, is the nostalgic aspect. Now, we may end up looking back on these fondly in 10 or 15 years or whatever, but, for right now, we have to play them in the present. And, we may go through the process of linking Modern Warfare 2019 or this Modern Warfare 2 or Cold War, Vanguard, or whatever to this certain period of our lives. And maybe when we're 40 and 50, we might look back and go, oh, I remember those days. Those were the best. And we might end up thinking these were a lot more fun than maybe we do right now. But, currently we just have to evaluate these games in real time without the rose-tinted glasses. And maybe that's why it doesn't feel as fun just yet. It's also easy to look back on COD 4, through Black Ops 2 and pick out how they were objectively great games without the rose-tinted glasses. But it's also incredibly easy to just wax nostalgic and begin to pump them up for more than what they were. We too easily forget the anger or rage that we felt back then. We forget all the broken aspects of the game or things that, at the time of playing them at least, made us want to uninstall the game night after night. I know those nights happened. I can't recall any because my brain has erased them and said only remember the fun times. But those definitely happened. Like I said, I broke a keyboard tray on our entertainment stand. I think I broke a mouse, and maybe a keyboard as well at some point during a 4 or 5 year span. So definitely they were not perfect. And these games aren't either. We're just currently experiencing the hatred. Maybe we need to give it 10 years so we can forget all the bad stuff and just remember the good stuff. So maybe we didn't have as much fun with the old games as we think we did. And like I said before, maybe in 10 years we'll look back on these and, if I were to do a retrospective again for these games, maybe I'd give them much higher marks. And finally, just as a last point here, and this is kind of the thing that drains the most fun out of the games for me here, is just the game feels like a profit simulator anymore. And it doesn't even feel like a game sometimes, right? With all the crazy algorithms for matchmaking. I mean, people are starting to think that, hit registration and game audio and weapon damage and all kinds of crazy stuff are now being controlled by algorithms just to increase more playtime or gamer experience, especially for new players. And it just seems so much more soulless and kind of dystopian in a way. And there's much higher emphasis on the store and battle pass, right? The old games they kind of released, they're like, please have fun with this. We tried really hard. Obviously, CODs were always made for profit. It's the biggest game, franchise in the world. But, it seemed to worry less about, they figured if they made a good game, it would sell well and that would line their pockets. Now they figure they can release whatever crap they want to and they'll sell a $25 skin of, whatever the latest crossover event is, and a bunch of people will buy it and it'll line their pockets, a shit ton more than any DLC pack in the past would have. And just every element of the game seems geared towards making you play more or pay more and not to have fun. Right? It's like they set out to make a game and said, how can we make the most money off of these people as possible? Like that was the first thing on the whiteboard when they started designing the game. Whereas before it seemed, and this is kind of all over the AAA space right now, so this isn't just a COD specific thing, but it seems anymore games are more made for squeezing money out of people and less about actually making a good product. Because back in the day, you had to have a great product for it to sell, which then gave you money to then continue on your company or whatever. But now you could just release something broken, or release a couple patches, a couple DLCs, and sell skins in the store and battle passes and stuff like that, and you'll make 30 times more than you ever did back in 2012. That's just how it is. And so games are starting to feel a whole lot more soulless. And the content releases have been getting slower and slower, especially in terms of the 6v6 multiplayer, which I play almost exclusively. You know me, I don't give a damn about Warzone. Unfortunately, I know there's a lot of you out there that love Warzone, and I'm so happy for you. But for us on the multiplayer side, the content's starting to drip slower and slower and slower, and with a lot lower effort and quality. Even the seasons of Modern Warfare 2019, just looking back 3 years, seem a lot more rich and inspired with a lot more quality content than the stuff we're getting now. And it's just, I feel like it's a cycle that'll keep going. God knows how COD 2023 will be since they're forcing them to release one this year. So, overall, just to sum up that point, the game just doesn't feel like it's meant to be fun anymore. Right, there's algorithms to say, no, you're going to play this many games, and we figure if you play this many games, you're going to spend this amount of money in the store, and that's just how it's going to be. Oh, you wanted to win that match? Well, too bad. We're going to put you with, again, people who tried out for phase because we need them to have a good time. And you just got done having a good time with kids that have no thumbs. So, you know what? Suck it up, bud. As opposed to just playing the game and, enjoying it and trying to get good at it. Just a lot less organic feeling overall. And that takes a lot of the fun out of it for me. So, in conclusion, I know this has been kind of a long video, so I apologize about that. But Call of Duty can still very much so be fun, especially if you're playing with friends. And I think friends, honestly, is the last remaining thing keeping this game alive and keeping this game fun, is that social aspect. Getting together with the boys after a day at work or at the at the gym, and getting back and just playing for 2 or 3 hours before you guys got to go to bed or go do chores or whatever. I think when you play the game like that is when it's at its very best, right? If you have a squad for Warzone or DMZ, or if you guys try to run the raids together, or if you get a 4 or 5 or 6 man to go run search and destroy for a weekend, if you can get into those situations, the game is still very much so fun, right? The game, or the gameplay and gunplay, is still very much so tight and frenetic and fun. But so many of the other systems just are hacking away at it. They're taking away a lot of the fun. Skill-based being the number one suspect, the most wanted element here. But there's just so many systems being put in place now that kind of suck the fun and the soul out of the game. And as always, with it being a little more profit-driven and a little less content-driven, again, some of the most fun aspects, such as the fun maps and stuff like that, also suffer in the end. So at the end of the day, we're looking at these games through our present day lenses and not the rose tinted glasses of games from 10 or 12 years ago. So maybe I need to redo this video come like 2035 and see, how much I how fondly I talk about these games. But I think objectively, these games are kind of meant to be a lot less fun than the games of yore, because they don't need to be fun to sell. Back in the day, they had to be fun to sell. They don't now. Now there's a bunch of other things that Activision, Infinity Ward, and Treyarch need to incorporate into their games to hit their bottom line, to please shareholders, stuff like that. So all in all, guys, if you enjoyed this video, if you stuck with me this far, make sure to leave a like. And I also want to hear your comments down in the comment section below. Is Call of Duty still fun for you? Are you looking forward to getting this year's and maybe next year's Call of Duty? And do you have a squad to play with? As always, I do try to stream this game a couple times a week over on my Twitch, which will be linked below as well. So if any of you are out there watching this and need a squad to roll with, definitely hit me up. Always looking for more people to play with. And like I said, that is the only thing keeping these games fun and fresh, is playing with people and making new friends. So by all means, leave a comment, let me know, and we'll get you in our squad someday or another. So other than that, guys, as always, if you enjoyed the content, leave a like and subscribe. And until next time, I'll sign off. Peace.